This is the Lift Up podcast.
Okay, we're live.
We're live. Todd Atkins. How we doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing good, man. Todd Atkins is a podcast host of a pretty popular, at least I know a lot of people around here know about it.
I watch.
Yeah.
I love all the stories.
You only do like MMA, or is it kind of?
Yeah, mostly MMA, and then I do some Hawaii-related stories. I lived on Oahu a long time. So.
Okay, so yeah, I had seen some of those, and I was just kind of where those stories are kind of all tied in because you live there, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you plug your podcast?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, it's called the Todd Atkins Show, and I also do an MMA Conspiracy Hour with a guy Miguel Odorati, who he lives in Costa Rica.
So how did that get? Because that's probably one of the most fascinating ones to me. How did that kind of get started with the Conspiracy Hour there?
Well, I knew Miguel from the internet back in like the 90s. Miguel was a matchmaker for Hook and Shoot, which was in Indiana, with Jeff Osborne. He was one of the guys that was around back then. You know, he worked for the UFC for a little while, Jeff Osborne. So Miguel was his matchmaker. They were one of the fairly regular regional shows. A lot of guys would go there to fight in Indiana. And then Miguel also, he was a matchmaker for a show called Euphoria and Bodog Fight, which that's how he ended up in Costa Rica. So Calvin Ayre, like, he's a billionaire. And he started the Bodog show. A lot of well-known guys fought on that show, like Eddie Alvarez, Chael Sonnen.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Lots of different guys got their start, or not really their start, but maybe the first.
It's like a stepping stone.
Yeah. What was the name of that again?
Bodog Fight.
Pull that up. I've never heard
Calvin
of it.
Ayre was into offshore gambling, you know, and the government came down on him, and that's kind of why it's not around.
It's not around anymore, but that's, what is that, Remembering Bodog Fight? That's kind of
like Miguel told me, he was a
There's season
matchmaker
one.
for all of their shows, and he never spoke to Calvin Ayre, not once.
See what it
The
is.
guy would come
Turn it
and
down a little bit. Just.
land his helicopter, watch the show, and
That's it.
Calvin Ayre.
yeah, he's kind of a thumb his nose at the government kind of guy.
Oh, okay.
You know, he's,
So was he doing, was he not getting, sanctioned with the Athletic Commission? Is that kind of what?
I think he did it more because of the gambling and stuff.
Oh, okay. I
Which
gotcha.
was, you know, offshore gambling and things like that. He was trying to get away from the U.S.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. That makes sense.
So a lot of the guys you see here were well-known guys. You know,
Yeah, for sure.
Because Calvin Ayre had a lot of money, so.
So they were just going and fighting for him.
Mm-hmm.
And was it all MMA, or was it kickboxing, kind of a mixed?
It was all MMA.
All MMA. We gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then Miguel worked about the first, I want to say 6 ADCC shows as well.
Okay.
So he's been around. He has a lot of knowledge.
And so how did you get hooked up with him?
Well, I knew him from the forums back in the day, you know, like
Masvidal?
Masvidal fought there, yeah.
No way.
Wow.
And so, yeah, he was on there, and, you know, the
UFC
underground forum.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
And, so there were a lot of guys on there. You know, we all knew each other. And then when I started doing my show, him and this guy, Mike Davis, who's involved with the show called Ignite Fights in Chicago, we all kind of started doing the show, you know.
Where at in Costa Rica?
I don't know exactly what this town is, but he's been there ever since.
I love Costa Rica.
You guys, is it all? So that's all like right now. I saw I don't know if it was the most recent one you guys were talking about, like the whole lawsuit that's going on with the UFC. A lot of people don't know about the lawsuit.
Oh, I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, you wanna kind of cover, just touch base on it real quick.
Yeah, so Bob Macy came on our show a couple of times. You know, Bob Macy's one of the lawyers that was involved in that. And really what happened was, obviously the UFC, the way they were operating, they kind of drowned out everybody else. So Carlos Newton, I don't know if y'all know who Carlos Newton is. He fought in the UFC, fought in Pride. He was a great fighter from Canada. And one day he just came to Bob. You know, he asked to meet him. You know, he called him on the phone. He got his number somehow. And Bob knew who Carlos Newton was. He admired Carlos Newton. And he didn't really tell him why he wanted to meet him or nothing, you know. They ended up meeting up. I think it was in Arizona.
Beat him up.
And Carlos went to his law office, and he just said, I need all this stuff here. He didn't even tell him what he was doing at first. and he just started working on it. And he said, "You're going to file this lawsuit." And he was a real estate lawyer at the time.
Oh, wow.
So,
So he didn't even have like...
"What are you talking about? You're going to file this antitrust law." Carlos Newton is the guy who did all the stuff for it.
Yeah.
No, most people don't know
No,
that.
I didn't even know that.
He said,
so.
"I need you to file it because I can't. I don't have a license. You're going to do it."
That's smart, man.
So for about 10 years, the UFC has kept this stuck in the courts. And then last year, the judge just fast-tracked it. So they're due for trial April 15th.
Yeah, pull that one up.
That's quick.
Yeah, well, it's been sitting around. I think Joe Rogan talked about it most on. I don't remember who he had on.
What do I pull up?
UFC lawsuit. Antitrust lawsuit. Yeah. Joe Rogan had somebody on recently. They kind of. I know what it was. It was when they were doing the Fight Companion show. He had Eddie Bravo on and the boys that they do the Fight Companion, and they were talking about that was for
Trial starts already. It starts on
8th,
April.
so next month. Yeah.
Almost.
And so it's been like Todd said, it's kind of been around for about 10 years. I didn't know anything about it till kind of recently.
Hey, right there. Click that first link. Yeah.
Now, Bob, the reason Bob first kind of had a inkling of this stuff was going on, he was one of the original 10th Penalty guys. He was with Eddie Bravo's first gym.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was
Right there.
Gerald Strebent who fought in the UFC. And after the show, he was asking guys for money to get back home. And
John
Bob
Field.
Macy was like, something's not right about this, So he started looking up how many people came, how much concessions, blah, blah, blah. And he was just putting all this stuff together. So he had already had kind of some idea of that stuff like that was going on, obviously. But it got more serious when Carlos got involved years later.
Yeah. And so it's what UFC MMA fighters in contrast get paid only about 20% of event revenue. So that means the UFC's taking 80% of the event revenue.
I think the simple way of looking at it is, one, they weren't getting paid a lot, and two, it was very difficult for any of them to leave and go fight elsewhere if they were locked into these contracts.
Yeah, well, especially they were in the contracts.
They were held hostage.
And then the UFC started buying up the competition as well, so it made it even harder to go anywhere.
Correct.
Right. So I mean, even now, where are you gonna go? You're gonna go fight in one. You're not gonna be, if you want to be popular, you're gonna stay in the UFC, right? You're not gonna.
Well, I think you could fight in one. I mean, one has a big footprint in Asia, but there isn't a lot of. For example, Conor McGregor has 2 fights left on his deal, so I think he wants to go fight Manny Pacquiao, but he can't. He can't get out.
Right.
Well, he wants to do that
He
for money.
said he wants to do his 2 fights and fight Manny Pacquiao, but they're not going to give him another fight till he signs another deal.
Right. Yeah. So they're holding them hostage by saying,
exactly.
"Hey, you're not." Basically, we're not signing you, we're not letting you fight these final 2 until you sign a new one.
Else.
Yeah, he can't work. He doesn't need to, probably. He has plenty of money, but if he wants to fight, he can't get a fight because they won't give him one.
Yeah, I mean, he's been pushing to be on 300 for and they didn't put him on the fight card for 300. So
Right.
Why aren't they going to put him? Why won't they fight him?
because they want him. Go ahead.
They want him to sign a new deal before they because they don't want to give him the last 2 fights. Because let's say they give him this fight. Now he only has 1.
Then he's out.
He could sit out like Francis Ngannou did and not take that last fight if he has a sunset clause in his contract, which he might. A sunset clause is basically you could sit out for X amount of time and then your contract's over. They can't do anything about it. That's what Francis Ngannou did.
Right. That's when he went and had that fight. Was it last year? Right.
And the reason those were in any of the contracts at this point was because when they filed the lawsuit, that's when they put those in there. But since then, after Francis did, they took them out again.
Oh, so they're not in there currently.
Yeah, so the UFC's not acting like they're too worried about what's going on.
Well, I'm sure they're
gonna
not. They've got the money.
But a lot of people think they're going to lose this case. So.
And
The UFC?
what are the ramifications? What do you think
I hope they do.
I mean, you're kind of keyed in. What do you think the ramifications are if they do lose that lawsuit?
Well,
Heavy.
they were
fight.
trying, before the court case start, the judge always does he tries to get the 2 parties to settle.
Yeah, mediation or
forced.
whatever. Yeah.
The judge forces that. They didn't do that in agreement. The judge made them do it. And, there were some numbers. I mean, I know kind of what they were thinking about, but the fighters aren't just going to settle unless they're, 1, it would have to be a big number, and 2, they want UFC to change their business practices. That's a sticking point with them. Unless they just give them like $100 billion, then maybe they might forget about it. But
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
You can do whatever you want for $100
Now I see why Dana can afford to give his friends $250,000
So,
cash. Just here.
How many
here,
fighters
here.
are involved, and do you know how many?
a lot.
Yeah.
There's basically 2 of them.
They had a
you
list.
You have
I
a
didn't- I didn't
segment
see
from when the UFC started to like
Kung Lee.
2010, and then you have
She was in
2010 to basically now.
Sean Fitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have 2 different lawsuits, but they're both antitrust.
Oh.
2 different sets of guys.
Gotcha.
Lots of fighters.
Is there any active fighters that are?
No.
No active fighters,
no.
which makes sense.
No one on the UFC roster.
Yeah,
they
would definitely not get a
smart.
fight. They would
No more
definitely not
fights
get
for
a
you.
fight. Yeah, they definitely wouldn't get a fight for sure. That's
But, hey,
interesting.
can you take my name off that list real quick?
That's pretty interesting. So how do you think that's going to go?
I think it's going to be hard for the UFC to win because a lot of the stuff that's in there. I mean, they were doing that stuff, so it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And obviously the judge felt they had a case. That's why it had been held up in the courts for about 10 years, and then this judge was looking at it, and he's like, yeah,
Did
we
they
need,
just get
we
the
need
ri-
to go ahead and do this.
They just get the right judge on the case now? Is that kind of what?
No, not necessarily. I don't think they were expecting, like Bob and them weren't expecting it to be fast-tracked like this year.
Oh,
He had
gotcha.
no inkling of that. It just happened. No one was expecting it, so it kind of caught everybody off guard.
Gotcha. Who's the guy again that you did the conspiracy hour with?
Oh, Miguel Iterati is his name.
Pull that up.
Yeah. Miguel was also one of the first guys that was involved in gambling in
Last
MMA.
name again?
Iturrate. There you go. Yeah, so
Facebook.
He's right there, top one.
yeah,
Video.
he's not active on Twitter. There's nothing there, but he's active on Facebook. Yeah,
That's him.
yeah.
Yeah, that's him. I've watched
But
it.
he also works with dogs in Costa Rica. And
Itu-
stuff. That's kind of his,
Iturrate.
Oh.
That's a
kind
cute
of thing
dog
he
right
likes
there.
to do. Yeah, he's working with some dog rescue. So he has a lot of dog stuff on his Facebook.
He's got to be a good
He's
guy.
not really active on social media
Gotcha.
as far as MMA goes, but
Well, he definitely
all his
did,
friends
he
are
de- he
MMA
definitely did
people.
something with ADCC because that's Carlos, the
Yeah.
lead ref.
Yeah, he worked the first 6 shows because they had a few guys that kind of worked the brackets.
Mhm.
So they had him. They had Kid Pellegro.
And what was he doing?
Yeah.
What was
He was on my show. He was one of my first few
Yeah,
guests.
I love
what
Kid.
was he doing for the ADCC at the time?
They were making brackets, matchmaking,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they'd also be like liaisons for some of the grapplers
Gotcha.
and stuff.
What got you kind of interested? Like, obviously, you're pretty keyed in on MMA, UFC. You know, kind of, where did that come from? Like, was that just always a passion, or?
Well, I watched UFC 2 with my dad when I was in high school. I had a friend who told me he had got it at the Blockbuster Video, and he said I took it back. It's pretty cool. It's like real fighting, and so I watched it. Because I watched a lot of the kung fu films. I grew up in Saudi Arabia. Actually, I lived there from '80 to '88 when I was young.
Just that where your family lived? Is it?
Yeah, my dad was working for Aramco.
Oh, okay.
And every Thursday night they had these movies from Hong Kong, like the Shaw Brothers
Before
kung
the
fu
Navy?
films. Yeah. I was only like 6 years old, 6 to 12, and so I'd watch these. It was every Thursday night, and it was the last program because they only had one channel. So they had programs, and then this was the last one on Thursday night. And so I watched it. I love those films, those Hong Kong kung fu movies. I thought they were awesome. And so, yeah, I watched UFC. My dad liked it, too. He thought it was pretty cool.
Hoist
And,
Gracie.
yeah, I mean, all of it. Not just Hoist, but just all of it in general,
Right.
kind of having, like,
Just the
kind
whole
of like real
makeup of it,
styles
yeah.
kind of getting in.
Oh, yeah.
How Art Davey had done it.
That's one of the things I loved about the most, the first UFCs, where like you got to see like the respective styles, like just try to defend that.
Well, there was no
art.
weight classes
Right.
either. It was just go out there.
I wish someone
mean,
would do it again.
Never know. I
Well,
don't- I
Pride
just
tried
don't
to
see
do it, right? Like Pride kind of tried to, in a
Well,
way.
I think, Pride was doing, they wanted to have kind of like, okay, their theme was who was the strongest. That's kind of who was the strongest. And they would try to go to these different countries and find people who were, elite at their art, kind of like one does. I think one has a lot of champions from respective arts, way more than the UFC has. A lot of their fighters are already champions in different fighting styles. UFC, not really.
I got to ask you this: Kayla Harrison or Holly Holmes?
Well, I think Kayla Harrison won the fight. Holly Holmes not doing as well as she did before.
I want Holly
You
Holmes
know.
to win.
Well,
I know you're probably surprised, but
you have reasons you want Holly Holmes to win.
yeah.
Plus,
Which-
you know, the combative styles, like Kayla's strength is not Holly's strength. So if she was able to get taken down, and she's very strong,
That's,
I
yeah.
think she probably would.
Well, she's got to make the weight first.
That's 300, right?
That's a big weight cut for her.
It's on 300.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good fight. So
But
UFC.
If Holly touches her, it's over.
I do agree with you a little bit there.
Striking wise.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. But so UFC 2, you watch it, you're kind of like very interested in it. You're like, this is. So you caught the bug then. You're like, UFC is.
Well,
Or
I
just
kept
MMA in general.
watching it, and I went in the Navy right after high school, which wasn't too long after that,
What year did you join the Navy?
1995.
Okay.
And I went to Hawaii, and I was on the bus just riding around when I first got there, and there was an arena there. So I got off the bus, I walked up the arena because I figured they'd have posters of what.
Kaneohe Bay?
No, this is Blaisdell Arena. This is in Honolulu.
Okay.
And I figured they'd have posters of whatever was going on at the arena. And there was Super Brawl, you know. Actually, it was Ultimate Explosion was the first one. So this was not Super Brawl, but it was Chemo versus Brian Johnson was the main event.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
Oh God,
dude.
yeah.
So I was like, wow, they have this stuff here. You know, I know who Chemo is. You know, I've seen him in the UFC. And so I went to that show, and then the next day I was in a tattoo shop. Chemo came in there. I was like, oh my God.
Really?
I was like, holy crap. You know,
That's awesome.
And these guys are like, yeah, he comes in here all the time. You know, and I was like, oh my God, it's Chemo.
I would have been so starstruck.
Yeah. Starstruck.
And so, you know, TJ Thompson, who promoted a show called Super Brawl out there for many years, I got to know TJ Thompson pretty well. And so I was around that a lot. And then I went to Japan, you know, so I went to bazillion fights in Japan, you know. I was
must have been
at
awesome.
Karakuen Hall all
Oh, I'm
the
sure that
time,
was cool
and,
as heck.
you know, I went to basically every Pride event that was in Tokyo, Yokohama,
Oh, that's
almost
awesome.
Wow.
the majority of them.
That's so dope.
So, yeah, I was just going to fights all the time.
That's awesome. And so that, you know, and then what year did you get out of the Navy?
2009.
Okay.
What'd you do in the Navy? MLS.
Oh, 2005. I'm sorry. Yeah, 2005. I was in 10 years.
What was your job?
I was on submarines. I
Oh,
was,
your
oh
range.
my
Oh.
God. I was clerical rate. Like
You were on
yeoman rate.
subs.
But, you know, underway, we just drive and then import. You do like paperwork or whatever.
Gotcha.
But-
Subs,
stuff.
10 years, huh?
Yeah.
No thanks.
Well, when I went in the military, I didn't really know what I was doing. You know, we weren't at war at the time. And originally I went into the Marine Corps office, and I was like, okay, I'm going to tell my dad that I'm going to go to boot camp. And he's like, why? And I'm like, what do you mean why? And he's like, can't you make your own decision? I was like, why don't you kiss my ass? You know? So I went in the Navy office, you know, and I said, I want to join the military, you know. I don't want to stay here. And he's like, all right, yeah, whatever, you know. And he's like, my dad been in the military, so it's not like he's clueless about what's going on. But my dad was in the Corps of Engineers in the Army. He was an officer. He was going to go to Vietnam, and the war ended, basically. But so the Navy guy's like, yeah, I mean, I'll come out to your house if you want. I don't care. He didn't even care. He's just like, and he was like, you know, you can eat 3 meals a day, and you'll have a place to stay. And other than that, you're just going to have to, whatever happens, man. You know, like,
So you really didn't know what you were
I
getting
kind of
into.
liked him, you know, because he's like, I ain't promise you nothing, you know. They'll give
Unlike
you
most
food,
of them.
you have a place to live, and they'll pay you. That's it. You know, whatever else happens,
Most
Which would've been
it's
like,
going to
It's
happen.
on you.
We
That-
do this, we do that.
Most of them lie to you.
It's just like in the future, whatever happens is going to happen, you know. That's
Yeah.
it. So I went to MEPS, and they laid out these jobs, and, you know, I saw this one, submarines, you know. You had the rate and submarines. So I was like, what's this? And the guy's like, I don't know many people that have been on submarines. You know, there's not a lot of guys that do it because of volunteer. And, yeah, the ones that do it, they don't really say a whole lot because they can't. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool, you know. So maybe
Top
I'll do
secret.
that. You know,
Oh,
because
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
do any
When
research.
you go on a sub, you have
Yeah,
to have
most
clearance.
of that's all top secret. Yeah,
If
yeah.
any kids are watching this now, you got all this access to research and stuff. I'd encourage you to do that. But back then, I didn't.
95, the internet's in infancy at the time, so.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about what I was doing really. But I was like, okay, yeah, the submarine stuff sounds cool. He says you have to go to submarine school and you have to pass. And I'm like,
Charleston?
okay. So I went to boot camp. Then I went to A school, and then I went to submarine school in Groton, Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
And, and they teach you about the different systems on the submarine, all kinds of different things.
Wow.
And, you have to learn. You don't have to know it inside and out, because when you get to the submarine, you have to learn that stuff.
Right, they're going to teach
and
you
get
that.
your warfare pin and all that. But, yeah, I mean, it was... I had watched a lot of movies, too. I'd seen submarine movies and different movies. But, yeah, it's not exactly like that, but... it is.
I can tell you everything about a sub. I watched The Hunt for Red October.
Yeah, it's a good. I would say that's the one that's probably the most accurate.
Single ping only, please.
I like Crimson Tide.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the thing that you
That
can
one's
look
not
through?
very accurate.
No.
Periscope?
Do you have the thing you look through and look at the surface?
That's
You
another
can,
one.
but really,
You have to be at periscope depth, right?
there's not a lot of people that are going to go up and mess around on the scope. Usually, the officer of the deck's going to be doing that, or the captain, or the XO, because you can't just have everybody. Oh yeah, come on. Usually you're doing something. There's a whole.
Which you're also not
purpose.
at periscope depth a lot either.
Right.
so.
You're right.
That's interesting.
PD.
Pretty cool.
So,
Yeah.
when you get out of the Navy, what'd you do after that?
I stayed on Oahu because I separated on Oahu. They couldn't separate me in Japan, so went to Japan, or went back to Oahu, and I stayed there till 2014. So I got out in 2005. I stayed till 2014.
So you from?
So I was just a regular person then. I went to college. And
Are you from Tulsa originally, or?
I'm from Broken Arrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you go to college out there, Hawaii. I
went to UH and Kapiolani Community College. Yeah.
Would you study?
I did like all my pre stuff, like liberal arts stuff,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I was also doing business management out there.
Business management. That's like the generic.
Yeah.
Right.
Nothing too. Nothing
I don't know
too-
what to do, so
I don't know what I want to do with my life, so I'm going to be a
Just take
business
business.
manager.
sounds good.
Nothing too heavy duty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So obviously you're interested in you're following the UFC all through all these years, MMA in general, Pride. You said you watched all the Pride fights that you could when you were in Japan. At what point was how long? So I guess let me go here first. How long has the podcast been a thing?
I think I started it right around the pandemic. I think.
Really?
Like when the pandemic started. Because
So-
you're
It's a
home.
good time.
You're home a lot.
Right.
I've literally been watching it since then.
Yeah, well, that's probably. I found out about it right after, probably right around the same time you. I mean, I remember you posting something about it, and then you went on the podcast.
No, I didn't go on his podcast.
Didn't you? Didn't you? come on?
Yeah.
Oh, I did?
You did.
Yeah, well,
Oh.
right after we moved,
idiot.
when we moved into
totally
the,
forgot.
we were supposed to both go on together, but I was,
Yes.
I was
okay,
offshore, and you went on when we moved into the new building in 2021 because you guys talked about the new building and everything.
Dementia kicking in, bro.
Yeah, Steve forgets a lot of things, so don't be offended.
One other thing I didn't mention was when I was in the military, I met this guy. He lived in the Ilokai Hotel with his mom. They had, I guess they rent out hotel rooms that you can basically rent forever. And he was really sick. He had an oxygen bottle. When I saw him Super Bowl events, he'd have his oxygen bottle, and he was, he's really sick. He's basically dying. And but when I went to his apartment, he had these double-deck VCRs, like 4 of them, and he had just tapes stacked everywhere. And the reason people knew him is because he was trading events. He'd tape trade with people, which was a big. Promoters hated that, but he was one of the biggest tape traders in the world. So I started doing that too. I got myself one. He showed me how to do it. And I would trade with people. So my first guest, like Justin Lawrence, this guy in Australia, he was one of the guys that I traded tapes with. So that's another reason a lot of people know me, because there were a lot of people who got events from me.
Oh,
That's
gotcha.
Guys
so
like Dean
awesome.
Thomas. Dean Thomas, who works for the UFC, he got a lot of events from me. Yeah, it wasn't just regular people. Some fighters got stuff
So
from me
pretty
too.
much piracy.
Gotcha.
I like it.
Yeah.
When you
That's awesome.
So when you started the podcast, what was your vision for it originally?
I didn't have one. It was like me and Miguel. We were saying this is probably stuff we would talk about if no one was around. So we're just recording it. What's the big difference?
Yeah, I gotcha.
You know.
That's kind of like this podcast. That's kind of how this started. It was a guy that used to train here that made a post online, and he was talking about like his life, and he had said something about a bench, right? And I've been training with this guy for 2 years. And he was talking about how he had lived on a bench for like a period of time in his life, and he had this really long post on Facebook. And I remember I called Steve at like I don't know, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I was like,
Want to do a podcast?
I was like, we need to start a podcast. And he's like, okay, well, like, what are we going to talk about? I was like, we're just going to bring people on and just tell their stories. Like,
I
just
started
talk to
mine
them.
first.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that one. I started mine for, I don't even, what was it called?
I don't remember what you were calling that. I remember you did have
I
that.
had Mo from ADCC on.
Yeah.
And that was like my big, that thing was like insane. He
Oh
was
yeah,
like,
Mo's awesome.
he was like, hey Steve, he's like, why don't you go live and I bring you on, I'll connect you onto my Instagram. And I'm
Yeah.
like, let's do it. So I went live and
Yeah.
1,500 people in like 30 seconds. And the requests just kept coming. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not really a podcast person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then he calls me. I shut mine down. And I was like, this is way better.
Yeah, well,
I like telling people stories.
Yeah, I was like, let's just like bring people in. Let's just have conversations. Like, originally it was Steve and I. We brought Jason on right later, but originally it was like, let's just have the three of us in a room, just like chill. We can if they're into cigars, drink, whatever. Like we'll just just be relaxed, and it's just like three people sitting around, whatever they talk about. You know what I mean? Like, hey, how did you get involved in this, or how, you know what I mean? And it's just like no script. We're not gonna like I do very minimal research. Like I obviously want to know who's coming on and what their background is or whatnot. But like I try not to cloud my head with too much information. It was very much kind of like I was like, I'm watching Joe Rogan all the time, and I'm like, it's very
That's how theirs is.
Yeah, it's like he's always said like I just have people on that I'm interested in,
right.
Like, and then it just blew up, and it was like that's what I told him. I was like, let's just have people that we think are cool or interesting. Nobody even has to know who they are. You know what I mean? Like
you fall in that category.
Yeah, it was literally like it was like he was like
true.
Todd is. We've been talking back and forth like, hey, you need to come on our. It's like for a while now. It's been like, hey, you need to come on, and you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, absolutely, I will. And then it's like just getting it scheduled. And finally, I told Steve, I was like, I'm just gonna tell him, let's get this scheduled and do it, because, so that is kind of how this thing started too. That's my son.
I don't do any research either, like, because I don't want to know what they're going to tell me, answer wise. So
Right.
I even tell them up front, like, I'm not really going to do any research on you at all. Just, I'll get your background first when we start, and we'll just go from there. And I just go off of what they're saying, really. I don't have any questions lined up, nothing.
It's more real like that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
more.
Oh, that's that.
Yeah.
No,
I don't know where that came from. To be honest
crazy.
with you.
That was weird. Oh,
Okay, the other phone.
yeah. His phone's up top. That's why. So, martial arts.
Yeah, I
Let's
mean,
talk about
I
that.
did train a lot, and when I first lived on Oahu, I wasn't really training, even though I knew everybody. I knew Egan Inoue, I knew Barry Ishida, I knew
Oh man,
all these
Barry.
people. But I started training in Japan. This guy Ryan Bowe, he used to fight in Shuto. He lives in Japan still. He had been in Japan forever. He was one of the few guys, American guys, that was living in Japan and fighting. And he fought in Super Brawl, so I met him there. He was a Frank Shamrock at the time. And he helped me a lot when I came to Japan, and so I was training with him, and then I would go to like Shudo Yokohama, and I'd go to some other places and train. I trained at this place rodeo style most of the time, which is kind of near the Yokosuka base. And it was all Japanese guys, I spoke some Japanese, I studied Japanese quite a bit, but none of those guys spoke English. So it was just, at the time, it was just me. I've heard they have a lot more foreign students now. But, yeah, it was fun, to be around those
Was
guys.
it tough language barrier wise?
Yeah, but, they just show you the moves, like, do this and that.
And just follow
train.
along.
And then when I went back to Hawaii, I trained with Barrett for about 6 months.
Yoshida?
Yeah, and then he got a job in San Diego. They hired him out there to teach, and that's where he's been ever since. So it kind of sucked because I was like, man, I'm going to get to train with Barry Ishida for, as long as I want. And then he's gone like 6 months later. But, yeah, it was really interesting to train with him because, yeah, one, he's so good, and two,
He's not nice about it.
he would usually come in to the gym and he would have kind of like, I'm going to tap everyone with this move and I'm going to do it 100 times. And we wouldn't leave until he did, So
Oh, wow.
if it took him till 10:30 or 11, then that's when we would leave. Usually it wouldn't because
my
Barrett can.
God.
Usually it wouldn't because Barrett,
Can you
he
imagine?
can.
I'm going to start doing class like that.
Barrett can, like Barrett can
Gordon
submit
Ryan.
people 100 times in a row. It's not hard for him to do that. And he can do it against anybody of any size. And that was the other thing. Like, Whoever showed up, you have to train with them, like, whether 400 pounds, 150 pounds.
Didn't matter.
He had like a big Samoan guy, Gordon, that was like 400 pounds. And like your hand would just sink into his body, into the blubber. But you had to roll with everybody. That was Barrett's rule, Everyone must train with everybody else.
That's so
if you don't
awesome.
like it, too bad. And yeah, it was interesting. And
I
Barrett,
like it.
he's kind of like,
A big deal.
he's not real talkative. He's kind of got like, I think he's kind of have like impediment a little bit in the way he talks. But so he doesn't do a lot of, you don't see him talking a lot, even on his own. If you go to his Instagram, it's just him tapping people. Like today,
Like-
Go look it up.
yeah, it's
So
like
pull that up. I wanna see
anaconda
this.
choke,
Pull it
rear
up.
naked.
What's his name?
crucifix.
Barrett Yoshida.
Yeah, right now
Barrett
he's
Yoshida.
yeah, and right now he's doing the crucifix. That's kind of what he's known for. He's got one T in his name. Barret, not two R's. Yoshida, yeah. And so that was the other thing. When he would do something,
He looks mean.
he had
I've
like a
s-
He
one-track
still
mind.
competes. He
Like
still competes.
Yeah.
when he's still
I've seen this
yeah
guy
he's
before.
still competing at a high
I
level, and
just saw
he's like
this.
my age. I think he's 49. So
Oh, we're the same age.
all those guys that are in the
48.
pictures with him,
48.
like Hoyler and Henso, they stopped competing long ago.
He's still.
He's still doing it.
Yeah.
141 pounds.
Yeah, and he was
Go to
a
that,
legend on Oahu. Like when tournaments happen, like when Barrett's match, like the whole gym
Go to that. Scroll
shift
down a
over
little bit,
his
scroll
mat,
down.
like
Hey, go to that one right there. I just want to see.
Yeah.
Peruvian necktie.
Really, his crucifix is what everyone knows him for now.
He's like,
That's
my name
kinda-
is Barrett Yoshida. I tap.
I tap you.
No, he's Hawaiian, so he doesn't. He doesn't speak like Japanese accent at all. He doesn't speak Japanese. He's like
Was
fourth
he
or fifth
first-
generation.
Oh, I was about to say, ask
Yeah,
what
so
generation.
a lot of people on Oahu that are Japanese or
That's
Chinese
actually
descent
very-
don't speak any of
That's
it.
very common too. Like
Yeah.
you get a lot of people who are Japanese move to Hawaii or vice versa.
What's that crucifix?
Yeah,
setup
the
you were
crucifix is
talking
what he's known for now. Like that's the only thing he wants to win with. It seems like
I
he'll
like
try
it.
to win with that until he just can't.
Oh, I like that one.
But that's his thing now. And he's like that. He has a one-track mind. If he's doing something like this, he's going to try to win every match with that.
And I mean, he's pretty
Yeah,
successful.
that's the way he is. So he's so good at that now because he's done it 100 billion times.
Oh,
That's the other thing.
nice.
Like this is a guy who all he cares about is jiu-jitsu, like nothing else. That's all he does. Is like
And he's still sponsored by them too.
Yeah.
That's crazy. He's been with Shohei and A&P forever.
yeah. Well, the show your old guys were from Guam,
Mm-hmm.
so Guam and Hawaii are kind of, those guys are on the same wavelength.
Yeah, Bear Katiga and
They have a lot of respect for each
Marcos.
other. And Ensign had a big footprint in Guam.
Vincent Inouye.
Yeah, so Ensign obviously is from Hawaii, but he had gyms in Guam.
Dude, that's a badass dude.
And
Yeah.
Spike 22 was the gym they had, which Melkor Manabusen runs now.
He's the only person I know that demoted himself.
Why did he demote himself?
He's a character, yeah.
So he just believed that he wasn't worthy of that
Yeah,
belt yet.
training.
What was he? What did he
He was a black
demote?
belt.
And so he demoted himself to brown?
I don't remember what it was.
I don't know.
It was something crazy because he did a public release
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram or on Facebook, one of them, and he had mentioned, he's like, hey guys, listen, no disrespect to any of those that are above me that have promoted me. I've just been taking a long time off, and I feel that I'm not worthy of this belt.
No shit.
And then he got promoted. Then he ended up getting promoted.
That's how Ensign is.
re-promoted.
Ensign's kind of like the opposite of what a lot of people are. He doesn't. He's more concerned with what he's doing for other people than himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to
Selfless. He's
demote
very
himself doesn't mean anything to him. He
Yeah.
doesn't care.
He don't
And
care.
he will
He gets
punch
it.
you in the face if he don't like you.
Yeah.
Have you met him?
No,
No.
I just
I've-
like
You met him?
that was one of my guys.
Of course, I hung out with Ensign a lot in Japan, and actually, he told a story on Joe Rogan, and I told this when I want to say it was when Ensign came on my show, but also another time because I knew who the guy was. He was talking about a guy that he had beat up, and it was this guy. His name was Eiji, so he ran. When I was there, Ensign opened a gym in Shirogain, which is kind of in Tokyo area, called Killer Bee. And Kid Yamamoto was one of the coaches, and I got Ryan Bowe. I got Ensign to take Ryan Bowe on as the other coach. Ryanbo got that job because of me. And so I was up there a lot, you know. We were training. Kid Yamamoto, Ryanbo, me, some other guys. Most of them were, you know, fairly new guys, but Kid had some of his buddies from Purebred and stuff that were there. Ensign was, no, Kid Yamamoto.
Oh, okay.
Kid Yamamoto was a big star in Japan at that time. And anyway, AJ was the guy who had put up the money, and AJ was a young gang member, young Yakuza. And so he'd come in, he'd lift weights. I remember one time, like, I had a kidney infection, real bad, man. Like, I thought I was going to die because I had never had something like this before. And, you know, I tried to call into work, and they said, you got to come in, you know, and we got to see you, and if you want to go sick call, whatever. And when I came in, they were just, you know, like, I was like
pale as
sweat,
a ghost,
covered in sweat and pale and everything. So they gave me, like, you know, a bunch of penicillin or whatever, and I went home.
Make sure you change your socks.
But as I was feeling a little bit better, not great, but just a little bit better, I decided to go hang out at the gym one day. So I was in, Kid had this little room off to the side where he lived at the time. He lived inside the gym. And I was just laying on the ground, and AG comes in there, and he's like, you live in Yokosuka, right? And I'm like, yeah. He's go, we're going to go to a bar down there. We're going to have a party over there. You should come. And I said no, and he like looked at me like, what did you say? And I said, I'm not going. And AJ got really mad. And Ryan's like, his kidney's infected. That's why he's laying on the ground like that. And he kind of looked like he didn't believe me, you know. But he was mad at me for saying no. Plus, I don't drink. So
He's
I was like,
nobody tells me no.
yeah, I was like, I'm not going to go there, you know, because I didn't know it was going to make him that mad, you know. He was mad. But anyway, he kind of screwed Ensign over on some money, and he was like hiding, you know. And then Ensign saw him on the TV because he went to Kid Yamamoto's match and he was in the ring. So Ensign tracked him down. He found out where they were going to be after, and he beat the hell out of AG. And he took him to a park and beat him up real bad. And he was telling Joe Rogan about this, but he didn't say who it was, you know. But I knew who it was, you know. And so he beat up AG really bad.
And you asked him about it on your show?
No, I just mentioned it to Ensign, and I was like, I heard you talking about AG but you didn't say his name, you know.
You left that part out. I've watched that episode. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch it again because that's funny.
Yeah, Ensign beat him up.
The reason why I liked him, I've always liked him because of everything that he put out. Social media is really good. As you said before, you know, he doesn't care about himself. He's very selfless. I mean, he's just a cool cat. Like, if you look at him, you would know his place in the grappling world or in the combat sports world, and you'd be like, he's a god. But he walks around flip-flops, shorts, and just like a normal person.
Yeah.
And this guy has accomplished a lot.
I remember one time we were at a Shudo event, and after the event, he was arguing with this guy in the lobby. I didn't even know they were arguing Japanese. That guy wasn't arguing with him. He was yelling at the guy. And it was Hayato Sakurai's manager, I guess. But they took him out back. There's a big staircase that goes up all the way, like Crockwin Hall's several floors up. And so the staircase, all that leads down to is the floor, you know, the parking garage. And I was like up here, and they were like the next flight down, him and Kid Yamamoto. And the guy like took off his shoes and got on the ground, and he's begging for his life or something. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? You know, and yeah, we got back in the elevator, and Kid Yamamoto said, I told him I was going to throw him over, you know? And I was like, what the hell? You know, what are you guys talking about? You know, he's like, yeah, this guy, he did this, that, and the other, and I told him I was going to throw him off the stairs, you know? And I was like, that's the kind of stuff they would get into at that time.
Oh, my God.
Ensign was kind of known for that stuff. He's more chill now, but back then he was known for that kind of stuff.
Where's he at now?
Oh, he still lives in Japan. He lives in Saitama, I think, is where he lives.
You guys are obviously still in touch.
Yeah, of course. He's always been in Saitama area, and he had one of the first jiu-jitsu gyms in Japan. Purebred was the name of the gym.
I think I still have a shirt.
Yeah, guys in Japan have been training in MMA style forever.
Yeah.
But he had the first kind of like a pure jiu-jitsu gym. Before that, Tiger Mask, who's a famous pro wrestler, Satoru Sayama, it was his gym, and then they needed to sell it off because, you know, it wasn't doing well, so Ensign bought it.
Did you know about Fukai?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's out there too.
Yeah.
Guam.
Guam. Yeah.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there was we had a guy. He was Army National Guard, and we were in the Horn of Africa, and we got deployed over there to do humanitarian service and help out. And we see these guys in camis, uniforms, and this guy's got sick cauliflower ear, and I'm like, I was only
curious already.
I was a purple belt, but I was a shodan in judo, so I was like, "You want to roll?" They were like, and they started talking in their tongue, in their language, and I didn't understand a word they were saying, but I saw the Guam logo,
Yeah.
and then I saw the coordinates for Fokai, and I was like, "Hold up." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's our gym." And I was like, "What?" And that's how all their gears, their merchandise is branded, is by their latitude and longitude. And when you look it up, it's Fokai Gym. It's absolutely cool.
That's way cool.
You know what Fokai means?
No.
Like I'm gonna fuck you up.
No shit. That's so awesome. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna
That's
fuck you
crazy.
up.
And this was in 2000.
That's a new favorite word.
I was in Africa, and I think it's 2006. No, my first deployment was on a MU. I was on the Kearsarge, so that was 2005, 2006. We went to Africa, and that's when I met those guys, and I was in contact ever since like 3 years ago. And they would send me tank tops. I mean, it was awesome.
You're
But,
not in contact with them anymore.
I don't know what the hell happened to them. They just
That's
fell
crazy.
off the map. I'm sure some of them are still.
I can put you in contact with some guys.
Oh
for
man,
sure.
yeah, definitely. Because I have pictures of some of them, so it was pretty dope.
That's cool. So what's next, or for the podcast, or I mean, just kind of.
I really don't plan anything. You
Yeah.
know. Me and Miguel usually will look and see what is interesting in MMA news if we want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And then the interviews, I just kind of do them, just kind of wing them every now and then. I'll hit somebody up and say, "Hey, you want to do this?"
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
You do all yours just through Instagram, or?
No, I do it through Zoom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just film them on Zoom and then put it on YouTube.
What do you think about Kurt Pellegrino?
Huh?
What do you think?
Oh,
about
Kurt Pellegrino from New Jersey. Yeah,
What do you
he was a
think about-
good fighter.
Yeah.
I thought he was pretty good. You know, but
He choked me out on Fight to Win Pro,
yeah, I mean, he's
and I got his belly fat sweat in my mouth.
he's
there
solid.
footage
I
of that?
mean, yeah, he's around forever.
Is there footage of that?
Oh no, don't pull it up.
You saw where
You see the belly sweat.
No, you don't see that. All you see is me going. I think go like this, and then when I look this way, he hit me with a bread cutter choke for the third time. I was like, "Fuck."
Well, he's been training forever. I mean,
Yeah, he's under Marcelo.
Of course, yeah.
Yep. Got knee construction, reconstruction. I think both. I mean, he's gained some weight.
Kills the
He
body.
ain't 170 no more, or whatever he fought at.
You still training at all, or?
No, I haven't been training. You can tell, obviously, I haven't been training, but
You trained jiu-jitsu? We spoke, right? You trained jiu-jitsu for how long?
a long time.
Yeah.
Like I started training 2002, and then I trained up like 2017.
Gotcha.
I was at Pete's gym for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Good stuff.
Well,
Was that the main gym that you were at for the?
Yeah, but I was mostly training with the guys. Like, I didn't train in the gi,
Okay.
at all. So it's just, I would train with like Hunter Colvin, James
Brothers.
Partridge, all those guys.
Gotcha.
They had their own little no gi classes they were doing.
Gotcha.
So-
Good stuff.
Yeah, we were always training together.
That's
and then
cool.
I trained some with Clay Mars too. I've known Clay since
Oh, Clay's-
2005.
That boy's a monster.
Yeah, well, I came home for a little while in 2005, and I trained with them, Clay and all those guys. So I've known Clay a long time.
Over at the factory.
No, this is at Mikey's gym,
Oh,
which
really?
is where Nam Hai is.
Gotcha.
Right behind Nam Hai is
Mhm.
that's where Mikey's gym was. And Clay
Is he-
was
is he
there,
still
Tom
doing-
Jones was there, Dave
Is
Heath
Mikey
was
still
there.
doing stuff?
Mikey.
Mikey didn't do nothing. When he got shot, I actually went to the hospital to see him
Really?
because his brother gave him. You had to have a passcode to get up there to see him.
Oh shit.
And his brother Scott gave me the passcode. I know Scott real well, and
Why?
What's his last
And,
name?
Scott Burnett.
No, Mikey.
Burnett.
Mikey Burnett.
And he had all these staples all over him. My wife was with me, and he was like, "Oh, I got, he hit me here, And
Didn't he have an MMA background as well?
who?
Mikey.
Oh yeah, Mikey was
yeah.
with the Lions Den. He fought in the UFC. Mikey
One
was
of the OGs out here.
Yeah, he was tremendously skilled. He was incredibly skilled, and he fought Pat Miletich. They kind of had a real controversial fight. It wasn't what, like I had John Peretti on my show. John Peretti was a matchmaker back then, and he thought that was going to be a great fight, and it didn't it didn't turn out to be. And I think Mikey kind of butted heads with some of the people that were running the UFC at the time, and which he does. He kind of has a habit of doing that with a lot of people.
About it.
Yeah, he has a difficulty with that, and I think he probably could have kept fighting, and because he was already fighting for the title at that time. I think when he fought Miltich, he fought this other guy. Forgot his name, but he had won his other fights up to then. He was a really good boxer. He was a really good wrestler.
That's always
he was
a problem.
Super tough.
That's always a problem in the UFC, right? If you can't get along with the organization, right? Like there's a lot of guys that were really good that they just couldn't drink the Kool-Aid, if you would, right? Like they just couldn't hang around, and they just couldn't do the Dana White thing, right? Like
sip the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's the most popular, at least in America, right? And I guess if you want to, you got to play the game, right? Like if you want to fight in the UFC and you want to be the undisputed champion or whatever, you gotta do what he wants, right? So.
And make no mistake about it. When back then, 2005, and when I was there, if Mikey wanted to handle anybody in Tulsa, he could do that easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, I've heard the name.
Yeah,
I've
for sure. How did
never
he get
met
shot?
him, but
He was legit. Well, he came out of 10 Gym over there on 31st and Mingo, I believe it was, or Garnett. And this kid approached him. I think he was maybe 17, 18 years old. It was two of them. And the guy asked to use his phone. Mikey was looking at his phone.
I remember
he wasn't
this
paying
now.
attention.
Yeah.
And the guy asked to use his phone. He said, "No, I'll dial the number." And the guy said, he put a gun to him at that time. And Mikey tried to slap it away. I don't know why. That's what he did. And the guy still had it in his hand, and the guy started firing on him. And had his son actually attacked the guy, jumped on him. Had his son not jumped on him, the guy probably would have killed him. Because the guy wasn't done shooting him at that time. He was still firing on him.
They got both of those guys, right?
And then Freddie jumped on his back. He's trying to choke him. The guy put the gun to his leg and pulled the trigger. He fell off. And Freddie's a real good grappler too. I don't know if y'all have ever.
Never heard.
Freddie's really good.
Yeah.
Mikey's son.
That's his son, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. He trains.
I remember
at Todd Ryan's place.
Okay.
Yeah, he's good.
I remember the whole. Now that you mention, I do remember that whole happening, whatnot. I don't remember what year that was, but I remember I was here already, living in Tulsa already. So, well, we have a little tradition. So one of them you don't drink, so you won't have an answer for that one. But we'll go with the UFC, or we can do MMA or whatever. Who's your favorite? UFC is typically UFC fighter.
2006. Frank Shamrock is the one I always. He was the first great fighter of all time, in my opinion. The first one. The first best one we had seen. There's been others since then, but he was the first one. And I remember his fight with Tito was kind of a real big deal at the time.
Slugfest.
Holy cow.
And
Slugfest.
There was
I could watch that 100 times. That's
on Oahu. There was only one bar that would show the UFC at the time called Players, and everybody was there from the MMA circles for that fight. All the guys that fought in Super Brawl, TJ was there, Egan and all was there, Barrett was there. All these people were there to watch that fight because it was a big deal at the time. And when Frank won it, you kind of tell people damn, you're gonna have to get to his level, because
that was the bar.
What he's doing is beyond what everybody else is doing.
He was, like you said, he was definitely the first great, pretty much. I mean, there was him and then everybody else for sure.
I still Mark Kerr, Mark Coleman, my favorites, hands
down.
Mark Coleman's in the hospital.
Yeah, that's
because he got saving his family from fire.
Smoke inhalation.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Mine's BJ Penn. That's my favorite.
See that picture I posted of him and I?
Yeah.
And Jamie's over here is the great one, Connor.
The last couple of years I was on Oahu, I was training with BJ's brother, J Penn.
Oh, that's
the
cool.
youngest one. And BJ would come because they had a UFC gym that they had open. And it was really close to my apartment, so I was training there the last couple of years. And he would come and train and stuff.
That's awesome. I'd love to train
Whip up on everybody.
So what brought you back here?
Well, my parents were getting older at the time. My father passed away a couple of years ago. So I knew I didn't want to be gone from them forever, And I'm glad I came back because my mother's, I'm having to help my mother now. because she's relying on me, since my father passed.
Right.
My brother lives in Norman, so it's just me. And so I'm glad that, in a way, I'm really glad I came back because I got a few years to spend with my dad. He wasn't sick, just happened
quick,
like
huh?
that.
How old was he?
Oh, man.
72.
Oh wow, that's
Young.
young. Yeah.
None of us were expecting it. It just, and so.
To get to come back and have some years with him, so that's
Yeah.
So does your mom? She lives out by you, close to you, or?
She lives in Broken Arrow, yeah.
Okay, so pretty close.
So, yeah.
Wow. How old is she?
She'll be 80.
Nice.
And
her health's good.
I don't know if she wants me to tell her. No, she's probably not going to watch that.
He lives by me now.
Yeah, that's what he was saying before the
Live in
podcast. That's
Coweta.
cool.
Oh, by us.
Yeah, I live in basically Juanita. It's Broken Arrow, but right there behind
Yep.
the come and go on the way out there.
Wow.
Your mom's health good, or?
She's
As it's gonna
she
be.
has a little bit of stuff she's
Yeah.
having to deal with now, but for the most part, yeah,
That's good.
she's pretty strong, I would say.
Well, that's good. Well, Todd, we thank you for coming on. It's been good. I've enjoyed it. Conversation's been.
We got to get you to sign the wall.
Yeah, definitely. We have
Pleasure
a tradition
having
to
you,
sign a wall. It's been cool. We've been trying to plan this forever, and glad that we finally did it. I love listening to your podcast. I find it so fascinating that the UFC Conspiracy Hour, and I love the UFC and everything, but it's super fascinating, and it's if you're out there and you need a good podcast to listen to, Todd's is in my opinion one of the better ones out there for that kind of stuff. UFC, MMA, all that kind of. He's got pretty good ones. So
Thanks for coming on, brother. I
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
it.
Thank you.
so what? YouTube, Instagram.
I usually just do it on YouTube. I
Okay.
was doing some audio ones, but it's a lot of work to do those.
Oh, absolutely.
So I just kind of just stick to YouTube. And
Gotcha. Todd Adkins Show on YouTube.
That's why he's got the degree.
Well, everybody,
Good job.
catch you on the next one.